Tonight, we step into a world forever changed. The air feels heavy, thick with ash and dust, and the sky carries a muted glow from fires burning far away. The sun is a faint memory behind a veil of darkness. What was once familiar is now silent, cold, and lifeless. This is not a distant apocalypse. This is home, reshaped by fire. Welcome back to Could You Handle It, the channel where we place you in some of the hardest, wildest scenarios history and imagination can offer, while gently guiding you toward rest. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe, leave a like, and share in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Your stories and thoughts help us create more journeys like this one. So settle into your favorite place, slow your breathing, and let yourself drift as we descend into the chilling scenario of a nuclear crisis. It begins with the quiet hum of something being not quite right. Alerts flash across your phone, news broadcasts show unusual updates, and military convoys crawl along motorways. Radio transmissions are delivered in measured, tense tones. Nothing says danger outright, but something feels different. There is a pressure in the air, a sense that seconds count, and that any mistake could escalate faster than you can react. You wait for the official word. Authorities issue careful statements, reassuring on the surface, but each sentence buys time to think, not to breathe. This is your cue. You start preparing quietly, methodically. Panic is contagious, and mistakes made in haste can be fatal. Your preparation must be deliberate, methodical, and calm. You work through your checklist like a litany. Canned food and a manual can opener. Bottled water, calculated at 2 liters per person per day. Basic medication and a first aid kit. A battery radio and spare batteries. A headlamp for darkness. Iodine tablets from a reputable source. Essential gloves, masks, and safety goggles to protect against fallout dust. Every item has a purpose. Nothing is left to chance. Your next task is to identify your shelter. The lowest room with the fewest windows. A bathroom with concrete walls and a bathtub. An interior room you can make as airtight as possible. Dense material blocks radiation. Distance from the outside reduces exposure. You know the first 24 to 48 hours are the most dangerous. Shelter is your first priority. Plastic sheeting, duct tape, and heavy-duty black bags are next. You seal the edges of windows and vents. Small gaps let fallout in. You use towels at the door and plastic over window frames. Nothing is perfect, but reducing drafts buys precious hours of cleaner air. A small rucksack holds essentials, IDs, emergency contacts, cash, a basic multi-tool, a charged power bank, a compact radio, spare clothes, duct tape, and sealed iodine tablets. You'll only take the tablets if official guidance confirms exposure risk. Preparation is your insurance policy. Every piece is considered carefully. The tension grows as neighbors move quickly, but the crowding and confusion make even survival supplies scarce. You keep calm. You observe, learn, and act deliberately. In this world, patience and foresight are as powerful as any weapon. Your phone buzzes. Alerts scream, incoming missiles. Panic flares in others, but you move with purpose. You shut the door to your shelter. Close windows. Seal vents. Turn off ventilation. Your radio hums on the emergency broadcast frequency. Your cat, your go bag, and you hunker down in the safest spot you prepared. Then it happens. The first flashes ignite the horizon. Blinding light, brighter than anything you've ever seen. A crushing roar follows, rattling windows, bending steel. Modern warheads release heat hotter than the surface of the sun. Even miles from ground zero, fires ignite spontaneously. Shockwaves travel faster than sound, shattering eardrums and tossing debris like lethal shrapnel. Radiation spreads silently, invisible but deadly. Gamma rays can sicken or kill within minutes. Neutrons and beta particles scorch living tissue without warning. Fallout rises almost immediately. Clouds of ash, dust, and fission products lift into the air, carried by wind. Water, soil, and air, far beyond the initial blast zone, are contaminated. The world goes silent except for wind, smoke, and distant echoes of chaos. An electromagnetic pulse surges outward. Electronics fry within its line of sight. Car stall. Computers fail. Cell towers collapse. The power grid dies. Even unhit cities feel the effects. Phones, radios, vehicles are useless. Maps of fallout are drawn in real time. Swaths of danger stretch hundreds of kilometers, moving with prevailing winds. Areas that seem untouched may soon be coated in fine, radioactive dust that clings to soil, clothing, and skin. Wind direction and exposure time decide who survives. So you are faced with a choice. Do you stay in place, barricading in your shelter, hoping it holds against blast, fire, and fallout? Or do you risk traveling to rural areas, knowing every mile could mean exposure, ambush, or accident? Every choice carries danger. The wrong decision could be fatal. You rely on your preparation. Sheltered inside, you monitor the radio. You ration water and canned food. You avoid opening doors unless absolutely necessary. Dust masks and goggles prevent the ingestion of radioactive particles. Every movement outside risks contamination. Time becomes a weapon. The longer you stay sealed in a dense shelter, the lower your total exposure. If forced outside, you remove your outer clothing carefully, seal it in a plastic bag, and wash exposed skin gently. Do not scrub aggressively. This simple act reduces a significant portion of contamination. Your survival depends on patience, discipline, and calm under stress. Sealed, commercially canned and bottled goods become lifelines. Fresh produce from outside is avoided until authorities confirm safety. Rainwater or open water sources may be contaminated. Any uncertain water is boiled or chemically treated after official guidance allows. Every sip and bite is a calculated risk. You plan short, purposeful sorties if needed. Mask and goggles in place. Hands and face covered. You avoid open fields, high ground, and fallout accumulations. Quick in, quick out. Return to shelter. Safety is your first priority, not convenience. Survival demands focus, foresight, and caution. Small networks of neighbors emerge. They share supplies, swap information about safe routes, and trade essentials. Distrust kills faster than scarcity. You learn to vet quietly and help deliberately. Cooperation can mean the difference between life and death. A Geiger meter becomes your best friend. You avoid hotspots and monitor exposure. You watch for radiation sickness symptoms, but perspective is crucial. Properly reduced exposures rarely translate into immediate fatal outcomes. Ignoring shelter and decontamination, however, increases risk dramatically. At night, a small ritual keeps you sane, boiling a cup of tea, writing a line in a notebook, listening to the radio for updates. Routine preserves mental stability. In chaos, structure is a lifeline. Calm, deliberate action separates survivors from the lost. The initial shock waves have passed, but danger has only changed form. Fallout settles like a toxic snow. Gamma radiation penetrates walls. Cesium-137, with a half-life of about 30 years, and strontium-90, also long-lived, seep into soil and food supplies. Every step outside carries the risk of contamination. Every breath could be deadly. Urban centers crumble under compounded disasters. Fires rage. Water systems fail. Sewage contaminates what remains of drinking water. Looting becomes rampant. Disease spreads quickly. Medical help is scarce. Communities that endure must rely on local resources, improvisation, and knowledge. You venture out only for essentials. Mask and goggles in place. Outer clothing bagged or removed carefully. Skin washed immediately. Quick trips. No unnecessary risk. Every decision is weighed, survival versus exposure, need versus safety. Life is measured in hours and meters, not days and miles. Stored provisions become your only food. They are rationed meticulously. You boil and filter water. Every meal is calculated. Every sip of water is accounted for. The world is shrunk to the size of your shelter and what you can carry safely. Local knowledge becomes invaluable. Neighbors exchange information. Trade becomes quiet and deliberate. Even small communities learn that cooperation extends life. Trust is earned slowly, shared cautiously, and built on necessity. Radiation monitoring continues. Any excursion outside must be calculated. Fallout shifts with wind. Even seemingly safe areas can become lethal in minutes. Precision in movement and awareness of surroundings is as vital as food and water. Nighttime brings another kind of danger, psychological strain. Silence, darkness, and isolation pressed against your mind. Maintaining routines, writing notes, listening to radios, conserving light is not just practical, but essential for mental stability. Structure provides the edge between hope and despair. The first weeks after detonation are a dance of calculation, endurance, and constant vigilance. Small decisions, how long to spend outside, how to ration food, which route is safest, can mean the difference between life and death. Survival is not luck. It is method, preparation, and persistence. Weeks have passed, and the world has changed fundamentally. Smoke, ash, and radioactive dust linger. Sunlight is weak. The temperature has dropped. Crops fail, livestock perish. Hunger spreads, weakening populations already stressed by radiation and trauma. Cities are now dangerous labyrinths. Fires smolder. Water systems are inoperative. Looting, violence, and desperation are common. Disease is rampant. Medical help is scarce. Every contact with another person carries potential danger. Every trip outside is a gamble. You ration carefully. Canned food is portioned strictly. Water is measured to the last drop. Food sources are scavenged only when necessary. You avoid foraging in areas exposed to fallout. Every routine task requires a risk assessment. Communities adapt or fracture. Those that work together survive longer. Sharing clean water, sheltering in groups, and coordinating rationing can make the difference between life and death. Distrust can kill faster than hunger. Bartering becomes the currency of survival. Psychological strain is relentless. Isolation, loss, and trauma weigh heavily. People cling to routines, small rituals that reinforce a sense of control. Routine is a way to maintain sanity. Sleep is difficult. Anxiety and fear are constant companions. Technology has mostly failed. Factories and supply chains have stopped. Hospitals are abandoned. Antibiotics are scarce. Even simple tools are precious commodities. Knowledge of purification, crop cultivation, fire-making, and basic medicine is suddenly invaluable. Traditional skills are survival tools. The environment continues to challenge survival. Soil is contaminated. Water remains risky. Fires, radiation, and extreme cold make travel hazardous. Short trips outside your shelter are carefully timed with wind and weather. Any mistake could be fatal. Years have passed. The sky remains a dull grey. Sunlight is weak. Temperatures are lower. The nuclear winter persists. Humanity survives, but it is a shadow of its former self. Isolation has become normal. Friends and family are lost to the blasts or disease. Constant vigilance, fear, and trauma weigh heavily. Anxiety, depression, and post-traumatic stress are widespread. Communities are fractured. Cooperation and trust are precious, yet fragile. Small pockets of humanity persist. Communities that have survived band together, relying on shared skills, trust, and careful planning. Governance is local and pragmatic. Decisions are made collectively, but every action is weighed against risk. Leadership is earned through competence, not position. Conflict arises, but cooperation ensures survival. Food production becomes critical. Scavenger supplies dwindle, and hunting or foraging is increasingly dangerous due to lingering radiation. Communities attempt small-scale agriculture, using raised beds, sheltered greenhouses, or indoor gardens. Soil is tested and sometimes replaced or laid with sand and clean topsoil. Knowledge of permaculture, seed preservation, and crop rotation becomes invaluable. Every meal is the result of planning and expertise. Water remains precious. Wells, springs, and rainwater are filtered and boiled. Community water systems are constructed with caution, often buried or shielded to avoid contamination. Improvised piping or filtration systems stretch limited supplies. Water sharing agreements are strictly enforced. Mismanagement can cost lives. Technology is scarce, but slowly repurposed. Solar panels salvaged from destroyed buildings provide intermittent power. Radios, batteries, and mechanical tools are maintained with meticulous care. Knowledge of repair and improvisation spreads quickly. Any device that functions is a lifeline, but most survival depends on skill, not gadgetry. Radiation monitoring becomes routine. Geiger counters, dosimeters, and simple detection methods are used daily. Children are taught early to respect contaminated zones. Safe pathways are marked, and the movement of people and animals is tracked to reduce exposure. Long-term survival depends on minimizing risk while slowly expanding habitable territory. Psychological resilience defines those who endure. Trauma persists across years, and stories of loss and fear are shared quietly. Rituals, weekly gatherings, shared meals, storytelling, and education keep morale alive. Maintaining hope and purpose is as critical as food or shelter. Communities create routines and celebrations to remind themselves of life beyond survival. Trade and bartering evolve into structured systems. Skills such as water purification, herbal medicine, carpentry, or mechanical repair are more valuable than raw materials. Communities slowly rebuild networks, exchanging knowledge, seeds, tools, and supplies. Trust is fragile but essential. Those who cheat or hoard often find themselves excluded, a fate worse than scarcity. Children born after the blast grow up in a world of scarcity and danger. Education focuses on survival, practical skills, and understanding the remnants of old society. Stories of the past are told with reverence, a warning and a guide. Every generation learns that knowledge and foresight are more valuable than brute strength. As decades pass, small settlements evolve into stable communities. Life is still harsh, but the survivors begin to build structures from salvaged materials. Old buildings are repurposed. Radiation-safe zones are fortified with earth, concrete, and other dense materials. Knowledge of architecture, ventilation, and protection from contamination becomes a community priority. Survival skills remain essential, but construction and planning are now equally critical. Cultural memory becomes central to identity. Stories of the world before the blast, the chaos, and the resilience of the first survivors are passed down carefully. These stories are not just entertainment, they are lessons, guides, and warnings. Children grow up understanding both the dangers of the past and the value of preparation, foresight, and cooperation. Rituals, music, and art flourish as a means to maintain humanity and mental health, even in a world of scarcity. Education is practical and community-based. Children and adolescents learn farming techniques adapted to radiation, altered soils, water purification methods, emergency medicine, and mechanical repairs. Literacy and record-keeping are emphasized to preserve knowledge. Every child becomes an apprentice in multiple survival skills. Knowledge is considered more precious than gold. Trade networks expand cautiously. Communities communicate over long distances using radios, messengers, and eventually low-tech signaling systems. Seeds, medicinal herbs, knowledge scrolls, and mechanical tools circulate slowly but deliberately. Trust is essential. Betrayal can have consequences that last generations. Trade is not only survival, it is culture, connection, and the lifeblood of rebuilding. Society becomes cautious and deliberate. Governance is decentralized, pragmatic, and based on competence. Leaders emerge not through force, but through expertise, foresight, and the ability to protect and teach. Communities establish codes of conduct for survival, trade, and cooperation. Trust and reputation are currency, as powerful as any physical resource. Agriculture transforms. Crops are bred or cultivated to tolerate remaining radiation. Greenhouses, hydroponics, and sheltered plots ensure food security. Livestock is raised in controlled environments, often monitored for contamination. Water collection and purification methods evolve, combining ancient techniques with careful experimentation. Knowledge of local ecology becomes as vital as understanding human behavior. Science slowly returns. Radiation studies, medicine, botany, and mechanical engineering form the foundation of this cautious civilization. Libraries are created, sometimes underground, sometimes in reinforced structures, to preserve accumulated knowledge. Education emphasizes observation, critical thinking, and practical skills. Each generation builds on the lessons of the last, aware that mistakes can be fatal. Culture endures. Music, art, and storytelling are woven into daily life. Festivals mark harvest, the safe return of travelers, or anniversaries of survival milestones. Children learn both practical skills and the narratives of the past, stories of fire, survival, and resilience, ensuring that history is remembered and not repeated. Communities maintain careful contact. Long-distance trade routes are mapped and monitored with protocols to avoid contamination or conflict. Information flows slowly, deliberately. Seeds, medicines, tools, and knowledge circulate, creating a fragile but enduring network. Diplomacy and cooperation are as vital as survival skills. Humanity learns to respect the environment. Radiation hotspots remain, guiding settlement patterns. Communities cultivate areas cautiously, avoiding previously contaminated lands. Observation and patience dictate every movement. Human activity is measured and precise, each action balancing risk and reward. Psychological resilience becomes ingrained. People understand that survival is not only physical, but mental. Rituals, education, storytelling, and shared labor form the fabric of daily life. Mental health is acknowledged, nurtured, and protected. Hope is treated as an essential resource, as crucial as food, water, or shelter. Over centuries, humanity adapts. Civilizations emerge that are smaller, slower, and more deliberate than the world before. Knowledge of the old world is preserved as cautionary history. Technology is selectively adopted, guided by lessons learned from past catastrophes. Communities flourish through skill, foresight, and cooperation, never taking life or resources for granted. And as you reflect on this long, arduous journey from devastation to cautious rebirth, consider the lessons embedded in every choice. Preparation matters, cooperation saves lives, knowledge is power, and hope endures even in the harshest conditions. Could you survive not just the days after a nuclear catastrophe, but centuries of careful rebuilding? Could you adapt, learn, and pass on wisdom for generations? Could you handle it? Start your preparation with the most critical element, water. Buy bottled water and store it in a cool, dark place. The rule of thumb is at least 1 gallon per person per day. Water is the most critical item in any survival situation, so buy as much as you can reasonably store. You can only survive for about 3 days without it, and in an emergency, tap water might become contaminated or unavailable, so having your own supply is non-negotiable. Next, focus on food. Purchase a supply of non-perishable food items that require no cooking or minimal water to prepare. Think canned goods like beans, vegetables, and soups, along with high-energy protein or granola bars, and dried fruit. A manual can opener is a must-have. These foods provide the necessary calories and nutrients to keep you going, without relying on electricity for refrigeration or cooking. For light and information, stock up on batteries in various sizes like AA, AAA, and D. Buy a battery-powered radio and a few flashlights or headlamps. In a widespread power outage, communication and light will be essential. A radio can provide critical updates from authorities, and a reliable light source will help you navigate and stay safe in the dark. Build a comprehensive first aid kit that includes bandages, antiseptic wipes, gauze, and medical tape. Also, remember to store at least a week's supply of any prescription medications you or your family need, along with basic over-the-counter pain relievers and antidiarrheals. With limited access to medical professionals, a well-stocked first aid kit can help you manage minor injuries and illnesses, and your prescription medicines are critical for maintaining your health. A roll of duct tape is an invaluable tool for quick repairs, sealing windows, or even first aid. A multi-tool with pliers, a knife, and screwdrivers is a compact way to have multiple tools on hand. For shelter, a heavy-duty tarp can be used to create an improvised structure or protect your belongings from the elements. These are versatile items that can solve countless problems in a pinch, from fixing a broken item to creating a temporary shelter. Include personal items like gloves, face masks, and safety goggles to protect against dust, debris, and airborne contaminants. A few sealed plastic bags will also be useful for keeping items dry or for sanitation. Protecting your eyes, lungs, and skin from potential contaminants is crucial for staying healthy and safe, especially if air quality is compromised. Building a survival kit is not about expecting the worst, but about preparing for a range of possibilities, giving you peace of mind. A complete change of clothes for each person, packed in a waterproof bag. It's not just about comfort. Having a clean, dry set of clothes can prevent hypothermia and other health issues. Remember to pack sturdy shoes too, as you may have to walk on uneven or dangerous terrain. For sanitation, include moist towelettes, hand sanitizer, and garbage bags with plastic ties. If water is scarce, these items can help you maintain hygiene and manage waste. Don't forget basic personal hygiene items like toothbrushes, toothpaste, and feminine supplies. A whistle is a small but powerful tool. If you become trapped or injured, the sound of a whistle travels much farther than a shout, and it conserves your energy. It's a simple way to signal for help without exhausting yourself. These items go beyond the basics, offering greater comfort, resilience, and capability in an emergency. Building on the essentials, there are a number of other items you can find online that are incredibly useful for a well-rounded survival kit. These items go beyond the basics, offering greater comfort, resilience, and capability in an emergency. If you feel you should grab some of these, there will be links in the description below. A high-quality water filter is an excellent addition. While bottled water is great for a short-term crisis, a portable filter can purify water from streams, rivers, or other questionable sources, extending your water supply indefinitely. This is a game changer for long-term survival, or if you need to be on the move. For fire, look for a ferrocerium rod or other reliable fire-starting tool. Lighters can run out of fuel, and matches can get wet, but a ferro rod will create a shower of sparks even when soaked, giving you a consistent way to start a fire for warmth, cooking, and signaling. You can also find waterproof tinder to make the process even easier. Consider a solar-powered charger or power bank for your electronics. While a hand-crank radio is great, a solar charger can keep your phone, flashlight, or other small electronics powered up. Look for one with a built-in battery pack so you can charge it during the day and use the power at night. For shelter, a Myla space blanket or a lightweight emergency bivy bag is a must-have. These are incredibly compact and can be used to reflect body heat, preventing hypothermia in cold conditions. They are also waterproof and can be used as a makeshift rain shelter or ground cover. Finally, a survival knife and a multi-tool with a locking blade and pliers are indispensable. While your basic multi-tool is good, a sturdy, fixed-blade knife is more reliable for heavier tasks like cutting wood, prying, or even self-defense. Look for one with a full tang, as it will be much stronger and more durable. These items will be your workhorses when tools are scarce. I noticed small things at first. More news alerts than usual. Convoys on the motorway. Radio broadcasts that sounded nervous. And then a string of official statements that didn't reassure anyone. They only bought us time to think, not to brief. I started to prick quietly, slow and steady. Panic makes mistakes, and I didn't want to be one of them. I made a short checklist and worked through it. Canned food and a manual, can opener. Bottled water, 2 litres per person per day was my mental rule. Basic meds and a first aid kit. A battery radio, spare batteries, a headlamp, and iodine tablets ordered from a reputable pharmacy in case public health recommended them. I also packed gloves, N95 masks, and safety goggles to keep dust off my face. I picked the lowest room with the fewest windows. A bathroom that had concrete walls and a bathtub I could shelter beside if needed. A small inner room I could make as airtight as possible. The idea was simple: put as much dense material and distance between me and the outside as possible, because mass shields radiation and distance reduces exposure substantially. I bought heavy-duty black bags, duct tape, and plastic sheeting. I taped the edges of the windows and vents. Small gaps let fallout dust in, so towels at the door and plastic sealed over window frames bought me hours of cleaner air. Nothing is perfect, but reducing drafts and particles is a huge win when fallout is in the air. In a small rucksack I kept IDs, a printed list of emergency contacts, some cash, a basic multi-tool, a charged power bank, and a compact radio. A spare set of clothes, polyester or synthetics that dry quicker. A roll of duct tape, and a small sealed bottle of iodine tablets with instructions to only take them if official advice said so, and I was in the advised zone. We got the government alert and the sirens. I shut the door and turned off ventilation that poured outside air. I closed windows and sealed them. I put my radio onto the emergency broadcast frequency, gathered my cat in the go bag, and stayed away from windows. The first 24 to 48 hours are the most dangerous for fallout, so sheltering without fuss was the priority. Radiation from fallout drops quickly with time. People often use the 7-10 rule as a shorthand. Roughly, as time passes in the first 1,000 days, the dose rate falls by large factors. The longer you stay sealed in a dense shelter during the immediate aftermath, the lower your total exposure will be. If I had been outside in fallout, I would remove outer clothing carefully. Seal it in a plastic bag. Wash off exposed skin and hair with soap and water. Do not scrub aggressively, just remove particles gently. This step removes a huge portion of contamination and is unbelievably effective at reducing risk of internal exposure. I relied on sealed, commercially canned and bottled goods and avoided fresh produce from outside until authorities confirmed farm and water safety. Rainwater or open water sources can be contaminated by fallout, so I used stored water and boiled or chemically treated any uncertain supplies after official guidance allowed it. I planned short, purposeful sorties at times when wind and conditions were least likely to blow fresh dust around. I wore a mask and goggles. I kept my face and hands covered. I avoided open fields and high ground where fallout accumulates. I went only for essentials. Quick in, quick out, leave no traces, and return to the best shelter available. We were cautious about meeting strangers, but we learned fast. Small, reciprocal networks were lifesavers. Sharing a batch of radios charge. Swapping a tin of beans for bandages. Exchanging accurate info about a working water pump. Distrust kills faster than scarcity, so I learned to vet quietly and help deliberately. I used a simple Geiger meter when I could find one to check hotspots and to decide whether moving made sense. I watched for radiation-related symptoms but also kept perspective. Many exposures, if reduced quickly and properly treated, don't translate into immediate fatal outcomes. Ignoring shelter and decontamination steps does increase risk considerably. At night, I read by flashlight and kept a tiny ritual of boiling a cup of tea if I could. I wrote a line in a notebook every day and talked to the small group of neighbours through taped-up windows. Routine kept panic at bay and made the world feel like something that could be lived in, not just endured. As official readings fell and authorities gave green lights, the safe path out was faced. Only move with a community plan. Insist on testing of water and soil if possible. Avoid scavenging for perishable foods until clearance. Expect infrastructure to be slow to return. Rebuilding means patience, coordination, and an acceptance that no one will be different for a long time. Prepare small and sensibly. Food, water, a radio, sheltering plans, and knowledge of decontamination steps. Information and a calm plan are the cheapest and most effective survival gear anyone can carry. If you ever hear a siren, shelter first, think second, and follow official health guidance closely. The discovery of radioactivity and the structure of the atom in the early 20th century laid the foundation for nuclear energy. Scientists observed that certain elements emitted energy spontaneously, and that atoms contained a dense nucleus surrounded by electrons. This knowledge made it possible to understand nuclear fission, the process by which a heavy atomic nucleus splits into smaller nuclei, releasing a substantial amount of energy. In 1938, Otto Hahn and Fritz Strassmann achieved nuclear fission in uranium. The experiment demonstrated that splitting an atomic nucleus could release energy far greater than any chemical reaction. Physicists quickly realized that a self-sustaining chain reaction was possible if sufficient fissile material were brought together. This opened the theoretical possibility for an explosive device of unprecedented power. By 1939, fears that Germany could develop a nuclear weapon prompted Albert Einstein and Leo Szilard to send a warning to the United States government. This letter led to the creation of the Manhattan Project, a top-secret program involving tens of thousands of scientists, engineers, and technicians across multiple U.S. locations, including Los Alamos, Oak Ridge, and Hanford. The project focused on producing fissile materials such as uranium-235 and plutonium-239, developing bomb designs and solving engineering challenges to safely detonate and deliver the weapon. The first nuclear test, known as the Trinity test, was conducted in July 1945 in New Mexico. The plutonium implosion device released energy equivalent to approximately 20,000 tons of TNT, creating a mushroom cloud over 12 kilometers high, and a shockwave that shattered windows miles away. Observations included thermal radiation, blast effects, and the dispersal of radioactive fallout across the desert. The test confirmed that nuclear energy could be used for large-scale destruction. In August 1945, atomic bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Hiroshima received a uranium-235 bomb, Little Boy, and Nagasaki received a plutonium-239 bomb, Fat Man. Immediate casualties were in the tens of thousands, with fires consuming large portions of both cities and radiation sickness affecting thousands more in subsequent months. These events demonstrated the devastating power of nuclear weapons and the long-term hazards of radioactive contamination. After World War II, the Soviet Union tested its first atomic bomb in 1949, ending the US monopoly on nuclear weapons. This event initiated the nuclear arms race of the Cold War, leading to rapid development of more powerful thermonuclear weapons. The first hydrogen bomb, tested in 1952, used a fission bomb to trigger fusion of light nuclei, releasing energy millions of times greater than earlier fission bombs. Thermonuclear weapons introduced yields capable of destroying entire cities in single detonations. During the 1950s and 1960s, the United States and the Soviet Union conducted extensive nuclear testing. These tests included atmospheric, underwater, and underground detonations, spreading radioactive isotopes like cesium-137 and strontium-90 across large areas. The environmental and health effects of fallout led to public concern and the Partial Test Ban Treaty of 1963, which prohibited atmospheric, underwater, and outer space testing. The development of multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles, or MIRVs, in the late 1960s allowed a single missile to carry multiple warheads aimed at separate targets. This increased the destructive potential of nuclear arsenals and complicated arms control efforts. Strategists debated whether MIRVs stabilized deterrence or increased the risk of accidental or intentional nuclear conflict. The principle of mutually assured destruction became central to Cold War nuclear strategy. The logic was that if two opposing powers could destroy each other completely in retaliation, neither would risk initiating a first strike. This led to extensive deployment of intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and strategic bombers. Even minor miscalculations or false alarms could bring nations dangerously close to nuclear war. Regional nuclear programs began emerging during the Cold War. India conducted its first nuclear test in the 1970s, described as a peaceful explosion, but it altered strategic balances in South Asia. Pakistan subsequently accelerated its own nuclear program, eventually developing weapons in response. These developments initiated a regional arms race, demonstrating that nuclear technology could spread beyond the original superpowers. Accidents and false alarms illustrated the fragility of nuclear command and control systems. In the late 1970s, a computer error in the United States nearly triggered a nuclear alert. In 1983, Soviet officer Stanislav Petrov judged an incoming missile alert to be false, preventing potential escalation. These events showed that human judgment could avert catastrophe even with thousands of warheads on high alert. International agreements attempted to limit nuclear testing and proliferation. The Partial Test Ban Treaty prohibited nuclear detonations in the atmosphere, underwater, and outer space, reducing radioactive fallout. Later agreements, including the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, sought to prevent new states from acquiring nuclear weapons and encourage disarmament among existing powers. Inspections and monitoring by international agencies became key mechanisms for verification. Modern nuclear arsenals vary in size, yield, and delivery systems. Some nations maintain strategic triads consisting of land-based intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and long-range bombers. Multiple warheads on a single missile and precision guidance make modern weapons far more effective than early atomic bombs. Advances in missile speed, stealth technology, and hypersonic delivery have shortened warning times and increased the complexity of defense systems. Scientific studies of nuclear detonations show multiple destructive mechanisms. The initial blast produces extreme overpressure, destroying structures and causing lethal injuries over large areas. Thermal radiation ignites fires and causes severe burns, while gamma rays and neutrons create immediate radiation hazards. Fallout spreads radioactive particles over long distances, contaminating soil, water, and food supplies for years or decades. Electromagnetic pulses can disrupt electronic infrastructure, compounding the impact of the explosion. Environmental modeling predicts severe global consequences, even from limited nuclear exchanges. Fires in urban areas inject soot into the stratosphere, reducing sunlight and lowering temperatures. Reduced sunlight can disrupt photosynthesis, collapse agricultural systems, and cause widespread famine. Long-term radiation contamination affects water, soil, and ecosystems, creating lasting hazards for human and animal populations. These studies inform both strategic planning and emergency preparedness. The concept of mutually assured destruction guided Cold War strategy. Leaders recognized that the ability to retaliate with devastating nuclear force would deter a first strike. This doctrine led to the development of extensive early warning systems, redundant communication networks, and secure command and control facilities. Military planners ran simulations to calculate blast zones, fallout dispersion, and survivability, aiming to maintain deterrence while minimizing accidental escalation. Thermonuclear weapons, or hydrogen bombs, dramatically increased destructive potential. Unlike fission bombs, which split heavy atomic nuclei, thermonuclear devices fuse light nuclei, such as isotopes of hydrogen, releasing exponentially more energy. The first full-scale tests vaporized islands, produced mushroom clouds reaching the stratosphere, and released energy thousands of times greater than early atomic bombs. These weapons could destroy entire cities in seconds and contaminate surrounding regions with intense radiation, reshaping global military strategy and international relations. Atmospheric testing in the 1950s and 1960s released massive quantities of radioactive isotopes. Fallout carried elements such as cesium-137 and strontium-90 across continents, entering the food chain and exposing populations to radiation. Scientific studies link these exposures to increased cancer rates, genetic mutations, and other health effects, highlighting the far-reaching consequences of nuclear weapons beyond immediate blast zones. The environmental and human costs of testing eventually led to international restrictions on above-ground detonations. The emergence of new nuclear powers added complexity to global security. North Korea developed nuclear devices and missile technology capable of reaching distant targets, while Iran pursued nuclear programs under international oversight. Modern warheads range from tactical devices to massive thermonuclear bombs, with delivery systems that include intercontinental missiles, submarine launch missiles, and advanced cruise missiles. High-precision guidance and rapid deployment capabilities have increased the lethality of each weapon and reduced warning times for potential targets. Scientific modeling of nuclear conflicts shows catastrophic potential even from limited exchanges. Urban firestorms inject soot into the stratosphere, blocking sunlight, lowering temperatures, and shortening growing seasons. This phenomenon, known as nuclear winter, can disrupt global agriculture, causing widespread famine and economic collapse. Fallout contaminates soil and water, spreading radiation over large areas and affecting generations of humans and animals. Long-term ecological effects include the collapse of local ecosystems, loss of biodiversity, and persistent environmental hazards. Infrastructure is highly vulnerable to nuclear detonation. Electromagnetic pulses generated by high-altitude explosions can disable electrical grids, communication systems, and transportation networks over vast regions. This effect would leave populations without power, water, or functioning medical facilities, complicating emergency response and recovery efforts. Even areas not directly hit by a blast could experience cascading failures due to interconnected systems. Urban centers face severe destruction from blast effects, heat, and radiation. Buildings collapse under overpressure, fires ignite over wide areas, and radiation exposure creates immediate and long-term health risks. Hospitals, emergency services, and supply chains may be destroyed or overwhelmed, making survival increasingly dependent on local resources and preparedness. Contaminated water supplies and food scarcity become critical challenges in the aftermath of detonations. Radiation poses both immediate and persistent threats. Gamma rays, neutrons, and beta particles can cause acute illness and death, within minutes to hours depending on proximity to the blast. Radioactive isotopes such as cesium-137 and strontium-139T remain in soil, water, and vegetation for decades, entering the food chain and increasing cancer risk, genetic mutations, and immune system deficiencies. Continuous monitoring and shielding are necessary to reduce exposure, but in many areas this would be difficult or impossible. Societal disruption follows immediately after a nuclear exchange. Centralized governance and infrastructure may fail, leaving communities to self-organize for protection, food distribution, and resource management. Social order becomes fragile, with disputes over shelter, water, and uncontaminated food sources becoming common. Survival depends on knowledge of radiation protection, water purification, local geography, and food sourcing, emphasizing preparation and adaptability in a post-detonation environment. Environmental and ecological consequences of nuclear detonations are severe and wide-ranging. Large-scale explosions ignite massive firestorms, sending soot and ash high into the atmosphere. This material blocks sunlight, cooling surface temperatures globally, disrupting weather patterns, and reducing photosynthesis. Crops fail, freshwater systems are contaminated, and marine ecosystems are disturbed, creating cascading effects on food chains and biodiversity. Nuclear winter scenarios predict dramatic temperature drops, potentially by several degrees Celsius, for months or even years. Reduced sunlight slows plant growth, leading to widespread agricultural collapse. Livestock and wildlife suffer from food shortages, while fisheries decline as plankton populations crash, affecting the entire marine food web. Even regions far from initial blasts can experience frost, drought, or extreme rainfall due to atmospheric circulation patterns, transporting soot and aerosols across continents. Radioactive fallout continues to affect environments long after detonations. Cesium-137, strontium-90, and iodine isotopes settle into soil and water, contaminating crops and freshwater systems. Animals ingest contaminated vegetation, and humans consuming local food are exposed to radiation over months and years, increasing long-term health risks. Ecosystem recovery is uneven. Some species go extinct locally while others adapt to the altered environment, reshaping habitats and food availability for surviving populations. Soil and water contamination complicate recovery and agriculture. Fallout persists in soil layers, making farmland unsafe for extended periods without remediation. Water treatment systems may be overwhelmed or destroyed, leaving survivors reliant on natural water sources that may also carry radioactive contamination. This persistent environmental hazard forces adaptation strategies, such as selecting uncontaminated areas for agriculture or using protective shelters and filtration systems for water and food. Acute and chronic health effects of nuclear exposure are extensive and well documented. Immediate exposure to gamma rays, neutrons, and beta radiation can cause acute radiation syndrome, characterized by nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and severe damage to bone marrow and internal organs. High doses can lead to death within days or weeks depending on proximity to the blast and shielding available. Long-term effects include increased risks of cancers, particularly leukemia, thyroid cancer, and solid tumors in organs exposed to radiation. Genetic mutations may occur, potentially affecting future generations. Studies of survivors from Hiroshima, Nagasaki, and nuclear accidents such as Chernobyl demonstrate elevated cancer rates and chronic health issues decades after exposure. Continuous monitoring and medical research have provided critical data for understanding radiation thresholds, dose-response relationships, and effective treatments for exposure. Psychological and social consequences are equally significant. Survivors experience trauma from immediate blast effects, loss of family and infrastructure, and ongoing fear of radiation. Communities often fragment, with traditional support systems disrupted, leading to stress, anxiety, and depression. Historical cases show that long-term societal recovery requires coordinated public health measures, mental health support, and careful management of contaminated zones. Medical preparedness includes the use of potassium iodide to protect the thyroid from radioactive iodine, decontamination procedures, and emergency sheltering strategies. Hospitals and emergency services face extraordinary strain in nuclear events, often lacking sufficient personnel, supplies, and equipment to treat mass casualties. Research continues into improving early warning systems, triage protocols, and medical countermeasures to reduce mortality and morbidity in nuclear incidents. After the initial fission bombs, nuclear weapons technology advanced rapidly. Scientists developed thermonuclear, or hydrogen, bombs, which use a two-stage process. A primary fission explosion triggers a secondary fusion reaction. Fusion of light isotopes like deuterium and tritium releases vastly more energy than fission alone, producing yields thousands of times greater than the bombs dropped on Japan. The first thermonuclear test, known as Ivy Mike, vaporized an entire island and produced a mushroom cloud reaching the stratosphere. These devices introduced the possibility of city-destroying explosions with far-reaching fallout. Thermonuclear weapons could be miniaturized for missile delivery, enabling intercontinental reach and making deterrence and first-strike strategies central to military planning. Missile technology evolved alongside warhead design. Intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, allowed nuclear payloads to travel across continents within half an hour or less. Submarine-launched ballistic missiles, SLBMs, provided stealthy second-strike capability, ensuring that no nation could survive a first strike unscathed. MIRVs, or multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles, further increased lethality by carrying several warheads on a single missile, each capable of hitting different targets. Testing programs throughout the 1950s and 1960s were extensive. Both the United States and the Soviet Union conducted hundreds of detonations in deserts, islands, and underground facilities. These tests produced large amounts of radioactive fallout, contaminating soil, water, and air far from test sites. Fallout isotopes like cesium-137 and strontium-90 entered food chains, leading to long-term health consequences in humans and wildlife. Awareness of these effects prompted international treaties such as the Partial Test Ban Treaty, which prohibited atmospheric, underwater, and space detonations, though underground testing continued. During the Cold War, nuclear arsenals expanded rapidly as the United States and the Soviet Union sought strategic superiority. Both nations developed thousands of warheads, delivered by ICBMs, SLBMs, and long-range bombers. The concept of mutually assured destruction, or MAD, emerged. If either side launched a nuclear attack, the other could retaliate with overwhelming force, ensuring total annihilation for both. This doctrine influenced military strategy, diplomacy, and technological development, creating a tense but stable form of deterrence. Accidents and false alarms demonstrated the fragility of this system. In 1983, a Soviet early warning officer correctly judged a missile alert as a false alarm, preventing a possible nuclear launch. Similar incidents in the United States and elsewhere highlighted that human judgment was critical in averting disaster, even with highly automated warning systems. The presence of thousands of warheads on hair-trigger alert created constant risk, where miscommunication, technical failure, or misinterpretation could escalate into global catastrophe. Regional nuclear programs began to develop as well. India conducted its first nuclear test, followed by Pakistan, creating a localized arms race in South Asia. North Korea, later, pursued nuclear weapons and missile technology, raising concerns about proliferation and the potential for conflict in densely populated regions. These developments showed that nuclear technology was no longer limited to superpowers, and that even smaller nations could alter regional security dynamics. International efforts sought to limit nuclear proliferation and testing. The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty aimed to prevent the spread of weapons, encourage peaceful energy use, and promote disarmament. The Partial Test Ban Treaty reduced atmospheric contamination from tests, while later agreements attempted to reduce deployed arsenals and delivery systems. Verification mechanisms and inspections became essential tools for maintaining compliance and monitoring secret programs. Modern nuclear weapons vary in size, yield, and design. Some are tactical, intended for battlefield use, while others are strategic, capable of destroying entire cities or regions. Thermonuclear or hydrogen bombs use a two-stage process. A fission explosion triggers fusion of hydrogen isotopes, producing energy thousands of times greater than early atomic bombs. Modern warheads can be mounted on missiles, submarines, or aircraft, with precision guidance allowing them to strike targets with remarkable accuracy. Delivery systems have evolved to increase survivability and effectiveness. Intercontinental ballistic missiles can reach continents in minutes, while submarine-launched ballistic missiles provide stealthy second-strike capability. Multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles, or MIRVs, allow a single missile to deliver several warheads to separate targets, multiplying potential destruction. Cruise missiles and hypersonic vehicles add flexibility and unpredictability, complicating defense planning. Even a limited nuclear exchange carries catastrophic consequences. Firestorms can ignite urban areas, while heat, blast, and radiation kill instantly within proximity of detonation. radioactive fallout spreads isotopes like cesium-137 and strontium-90, contaminating soil, water, and food chains for years. Electromagnetic pulses generated by high-yield detonations can disable electronics over wide areas, disrupting communication, transportation, and infrastructure. Scientific models indicate that regional nuclear war could trigger a temporary cooling of the climate, known as nuclear winter, reducing sunlight, collapsing Throughout history, there have been numerous close calls that illustrate the fragility of nuclear deterrence. False alarms, miscommunications, and technical malfunctions have at times nearly triggered full-scale launches. The 1983 Petrov incident in the Soviet Union is a prime example. A satellite falsely reported incoming US missiles, but the officer in charge judged it to be a malfunction and prevented escalation. Similar events in the United States, such as NORAD false alarms caused by computer errors or misinterpreted satellite data, highlight the constant risk inherent in hair-trigger alert systems. Accidents with nuclear weapons have occurred on land, at sea, and in the air. Several broken arrow. Incidents involve bombs accidentally dropped, lost, or damaged without detonation. In some cases, bombs sank into the ocean or were recovered with difficulty, creating long-term environmental hazards. These events demonstrate that the danger of nuclear weapons extends beyond intentional use to include human error, mechanical failure, and natural disasters. The environmental impact of nuclear tests has also been profound. Atmospheric and underwater tests release radioactive isotopes globally, contaminating soil, water, and food supplies. Long-lived isotopes such as strontium-90 and cesium-137 entered the human body through milk, crops, and seafood, increasing cancer and genetic mutation rates. International treaties like the Partial Test Ban Treaty limited these tests to underground detonations, reducing but not eliminating the spread of radioactive materials. After the initial development of nuclear weapons, proliferation became a central concern. The Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, France, and China developed nuclear arsenals, breaking the original US monopoly. Regional powers such as India, Pakistan, and Israel pursued their own programs, altering the balance of power in South Asia and the Middle East. North Korea's nuclear development in the 21st century added further complexity to global security. The spread of nuclear weapons prompted international agreements to control their development and use. The Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty sought to prevent new states from acquiring weapons while promoting peaceful nuclear energy and disarmament. Despite widespread adoption, enforcement challenges and clandestine programs persist, illustrating the difficulty of containing nuclear technology once the scientific knowledge exists. Modern stockpiles are maintained with advanced delivery systems, including intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and strategic bombers. Many missiles are equipped with multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles, increasing destructive potential per launch. Tactical and strategic nuclear weapons coexist, with yields ranging from small city-leveling devices to multi-megaton thermonuclear bombs capable of regional or global devastation. Command and control systems are designed to prevent accidental launch and allow rapid response. However, cyber vulnerabilities, human error, and false alarms remain critical risks. The speed of modern missiles means decision windows for leaders are often measured in minutes, placing immense pressure on technical and human safeguards. When a nuclear weapon detonates, it releases energy through fission, or a combination of fission and fusion. The initial blast produces an intense fireball, with temperatures exceeding millions of degrees Celsius in the core, vaporizing everything at ground zero. The shockwave radiates outward, destroying structures, shattering glass, and throwing debris at supersonic speeds. Thermal radiation ignites fires over wide areas, while the subsequent mushroom cloud carries radioactive particles into the atmosphere. Fission weapons split heavy atomic nuclei like uranium-235 or plutonium-239, releasing energy and neutrons that propagate further reactions. Fusion weapons, or thermonuclear bombs, use these fission reactions to trigger fusion of light isotopes such as deuterium and tritium, producing exponentially more energy. The largest hydrogen bombs can yield tens of millions of tons of TNT equivalent, capable of obliterating entire metropolitan regions. Radioactive fallout consists of isotopes like cesium-137, strontium-90, and iodine-131, which contaminate soil, water, and food supplies. Fallout can persist for decades, causing cancers, genetic mutations, and environmental disruption. The distribution of fallout depends on altitude of detonation, weather patterns, and topography, spreading contamination far beyond the immediate blast area. After the first successful detonation in the New Mexico desert, nations quickly recognized both the strategic power and existential threat of nuclear weapons. The United States dropped 2 bombs on Japan in 1945, demonstrating the catastrophic consequences of urban nuclear strikes. Hiroshima and Nagasaki suffered immediate destruction, with tens of thousands killed instantly, and many more dying from radiation sickness in the following months. The Soviet Union tested its first atomic bomb a few years later, ending the US monopoly and initiating the Cold War nuclear arms race. Both superpowers expanded their arsenals rapidly, developing more sophisticated weapons, delivery systems, and early warning networks. Intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and strategic bombers created a triad designed to ensure second strike capability, a key element of deterrence. Thermonuclear weapons, or hydrogen bombs, emerged in the early 1950s, vastly increasing destructive potential. Fusion reactions allowed explosions thousands of times more powerful than the bombs used in Japan, capable of leveling entire cities and generating fallout that could affect regions hundreds of kilometers away. During the 1950s and 1960s, nuclear testing accelerated dramatically. The United States conducted hundreds of tests in Nevada, the Pacific, and Alaska, while the Soviet Union tested in Kazakhstan, Novaya Zemlya, and other remote areas. These tests were designed to evaluate bomb designs, yield, and delivery mechanisms, but they also released massive amounts of radioactive fallout into the atmosphere. Atmospheric tests spread isotopes such as strontium-90 and cesium-137 across continents, entering food chains through milk, crops, and water supplies. Long-term studies later linked these exposures to increased cancer rates, genetic mutations, and other health issues in civilian populations. The environmental and human impact of these tests led to the Partial Test Ban Treaty, which prohibited nuclear detonations in the atmosphere, outer space, and underwater. Underground tests continued, but were designed to contain much of the radiation. The era also saw advances in missile technology and nuclear strategy. Intercontinental ballistic missiles reduced the time between launch and target to under half an hour, while submarine-launched missiles offered stealth and second-strike capability. Military planners emphasized deterrence, relying on the concept that the threat of mutual destruction would prevent either side from using nuclear weapons. In the 1960s and 1970s, multiple independently targetable reentry vehicles, or MIRVs, transformed nuclear strategy. These systems allowed a single missile to carry several warheads, each capable of striking a different target. The innovation dramatically increased the destructive potential of a first strike, making any preemptive attack far more devastating. MIRVs also complicated arms control, because limiting the number of missiles no longer limited the number of warheads. Negotiations like the Strategic Arms Limitation talks sought to manage these capabilities, but technical advancements often outpaced treaties. Military planners debated whether MIRVs enhanced deterrence or increased the risk of accidental war, as even a single missile launch could trigger catastrophic retaliation. During this period, the doctrine of mutually assured destruction became central to strategic thinking. The idea was that if both sides could destroy each other completely in retaliation, neither would risk initiating a nuclear attack. Simulations calculated blast effects, radiation spread, and population survivability, but human error and technological failures remained a critical vulnerability. Incidents such as the 1983 false alarm in the Soviet Union demonstrated how close the world could come to unintentional nuclear war. Thermonuclear weapons, or hydrogen bombs, represent a major escalation in destructive potential compared to the first atomic bombs. These devices use a two-stage process. An initial fission explosion triggers a secondary fusion reaction, where isotopes of hydrogen combine to release enormous energy. The first full-scale test demonstrated yields millions of tons of TNT equivalent, far exceeding the energy of earlier fission bombs. Unlike fission-only devices, thermonuclear weapons can be designed with variable yields, allowing strategic flexibility. The energy released from a nuclear explosion occurs in several stages. The initial fireball vaporizes everything at the blast center, followed by a shockwave that flattens buildings and throws debris. Thermal radiation ignites fires over large areas, while neutrons and gamma rays cause immediate radiation damage. Fallout spreads radioactive particles into the environment, contaminating soil, water, and food for months or years. Electromagnetic pulses generated by high-altitude detonations can disable electrical grids and communication systems across entire regions. Even with careful control and deterrence, the risks remain significant. False alarms, accidents, or miscalculations could trigger launches, while proliferation increases the number of actors capable of deploying nuclear weapons. Limited exchanges between smaller nuclear powers could still cause regional devastation and trigger wider climatic effects. Scientific modeling suggests that even a war involving tens of nuclear weapons could produce global agricultural collapse due to firestorms and stratospheric soot injection, creating famine on a scale never seen before. The environmental, societal, and human consequences of nuclear weapons are profound. Survivors face immediate hazards from blast, heat, and radiation, followed by long-term contamination of food and water. Infrastructure breakdown hampers emergency response, while societal structures can collapse under the strain of survival needs. Global climate effects, known as nuclear winter, threaten agricultural productivity worldwide, endangering millions beyond the initial conflict zones. Understanding the history, technology, and consequences of nuclear weapons highlights both the destructive power humans have harnessed and the precarious balance that has prevented their widespread use. From the first atomic bombs to modern thermonuclear arsenals, the combination of technical innovation, human judgment, and international agreements has shaped the strategic landscape. Yet the potential for catastrophic impact remains ever present, underscoring the importance of vigilance, preparation, and global cooperation.